the record. Okay. So let's make this an official. I'm glad you could be here, Rudy. And let's make this an official start to the meeting. This is a little bit of like an ad hoc public meeting because this is like our first time coming together officially forming a membership and commission development committee. So we don't have a chair yet. I'm sort of chairing this meeting. I'm also, because there's some stuff that Kelly is otherwise engaged in, I'm going to basically be adminning the meeting, but we're keeping it like very simple today. This is my goal was really to just kind of talk about what my hopes were for this committee and kind of get some input from you all on like next steps and how to proceed with some of this work. So that is what's going to happen. We're scheduled 11 to 12. I will though if you don't mind, take a few minutes to maybe give a quick update on the state of things. Because I'm sure you're dying to know. So I will share that as of right now, AmeriCorps, and I'm putting this stuff in our base camp too, so hopefully you're seeing that, but I know it helps to just kind of talk about it out loud too. As of right now, current funding for AmeriCorps programs is accessible, still there, it's still awarded to us, and we're able to reimburse programs. All AmeriCorps branches, save for NCCC, are currently operating. A large portion of AmeriCorps staff, they had like 600 plus, somewhere between 6 and 700, did take the deferred resignation program, which is the DRP. And then also DOJ, after their visit, did give the deadline for the 50% reduction in force, the RIF. Once that occurred, the NCCC is the only AmeriCorps branch that the federal staff directly supervise AmeriCorps members. So when you have such a huge reduction in staff that have, need to supervise AmeriCorps members, 17 to 26-year-olds or whatnot, and that can happen, they were then advised to do a mass demobilization of all the AmeriCorps and NCCC members across the country. That, of course, then spurred, understandably so, some panic and worry and confusion that AmeriCorps in general is being shut down. No, the other branches are running, but that is the nuance behind kind of what happened with that mass demobilization. Of course, that doesn't give us any feelings of comfort or stability or whatnot, right? We then found out that with the additional RIF across the entire AmeriCorps agency, that they did go down to about 100 staff. They shut down all OROs, the Office of Regional Operations. So that's where you've got the headquarters in DC, and then you've got like West Coast region, which is like Guam, Hawaii, Alaska, like Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington. Like those we're program officers to our grantees. Our grantees at AmeriCorps to us, or our program officers to us as AmeriCorps grantees for like our operational grants and whatnot, is in that regional office. And so those regional offices have been shut down. This was obviously, like, you hear in the news that that's all going to happen, but nobody knew the timeline, but kind of expecting it once you see the headlines at DOJ is at AmeriCorps' office. And I kind of assumed it was coming soon because they had been at Peace Corps the like week or two before, and obviously we're in that kind of same family, right? So that is obviously raises a lot of concerns for how to get through current practices and processes. Literally the day that RIF happened was the same day every state commission's operational grants were due into AmeriCorps for funding that starts in July. They're currently already, we're expecting delays to the competitive and formula grant processes. So basically, the funding we give then to the local nonprofits and whatnot, because they were going back and review and applying all the executive order compliance requirements to all of their processes and paperwork and so forth, and having to review or, look at things under that new lens. And then that was when they still had 600 employees. So obviously now going down to 100, there's a lot of concerns around what is that going to look like? How much is that going to delay things? I think especially when you're looking at, we are already expecting a late start. How is that going to impact, local nonprofits or whatnot who have site agreements or, have agreements with service sites, to have a member like trained and in place by a certain date, especially if it's like a school or something and it's, there's dates you're having to work with. Will they be able to even meet those agreements or on time? Or we're not seeing any federal funding that's been frozen or cut, but we hear from partners that, some of their match that they're bringing to the table is being affected, or those service sites might be losing funding and maybe no longer can host a member. So there's a lot of, and that's not catastrophizing, it's just mitigation planning and thinking like, the domino effect of how some of these things could be impacted. So these are the things we're paying attention to. Our National Association is obviously doing a lot of different stuff out there. I hope that you've gotten some emails from Sierra, maybe, with some, or in that you're also seeing around out there some ways for you to participate in elevating, the importance of AmeriCorps, reaching out to people and whatnot. And I can't make asks, but you're certainly free to go out there and find that stuff and follow up in your personal time. And it's still the case that we're worried about the administration, having full control of the budget and, potentially cutting service next year. And I always like to say, we're a state service commission for AmeriCorps volunteerism and civic engagement. And I know that I'll just say AmeriCorps, 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 and I'm not forgetting those other pieces, but that is the federal entity that provides the funding for people to do those other things. And so, through Volunteer Generation Fund and through, that we support a lot of volunteers and through AmeriCorps member recruitment and management and whatnot. So when I'm kind of broadly saying AmeriCorps, I'm really am thinking about these other focus areas being impacted. So that's sort of the stance of where it's at right now. Obviously, a lot of concern, was already in place for the next term, but it's concerning to see such a reduction in force for this term. There have been some bills that have been released to kind of prevent that. As we know, there's multiple lawsuits out there happening as well. So it is a turbulent time. It's been a long 90 days, not even 90 days, but what we're focusing on is just really being like transparent, but also not like rushing to promote stuff. We want to make sure it's like accurate and true, and and give information and stuff. I'm posting probably daily to our grantees to give them resources and kind of calm fears as any way that I can. Our National Association is keeping us very briefed on things, as well as all the way back since March in DC. We were talking with AmeriCorps leadership around here's some recommendations for things you could reduce, and like increase efficiency, especially if you do have less staff. And here's some ways we can help, and this and that. So there's a lot of conversation around that. And that's probably, I guess, the biggest download I could give on kind of what's happening. But we certainly, just as much as people can like raise their voice about the value of service, the better.
Thanks,
A bit of
Carrie.
a
That's really
downer to start the
helpful.
meeting with. I
Yeah.
apologize. What's going on? So sorry, go ahead.
Could I ask a question? So under previous administrations, what has been kind of the dynamics between the executive branch and Congress as relates to AmeriCorps? Do you see any way that Congress would be able to exert some leverage in this situation, or I don't know
Well,
enough about how
yeah,
those
I will
structures
share
work.
that this administration previously also sought to zero out AmeriCorps. And it never happened. In fact, most of the time we got increases, because it's very, like across the aisle supported endeavor. But that's a different time, and they control that's because they didn't fully control every single branch. And so when we were in DC in March and doing visits on the Hill, we talked to a lot of people that were like, yeah, we really support this, but we also don't have any control of the budget. And so obviously, like, in order, the messaging right now is it is Republican members of the Congress that need to um, show their support. And that is who is the target audience is currently for all of the outreach.
Okay, thank
Because
you.
yeah, that's kind of how it looks these days. And obviously, if we're focused on efficiency, you can't get more efficient than the National Service Program and the value that they bring to their communities. And yes, there is a lot of rhetoric out there around like failed audits, but they're certainly not the only federal agency that has had that, but they've also been working on that, as Michael Smith, former CEO, testified to Congress just several months ago of all the headway that they've made on actually addressing some of those things. So, there's, I think, just a lot of work to get that message out. But I believe in the resilience of AmeriCorps and of this, and I'm we're moving ahead, we're moving forward, we're assuming that we will have that funding that we need, and we're still here, we still got work to do, and kind of circling back to just sort of like, this committee is kind of why I wanted to get this formed is that, we are, as the State Service Commission, that hub for national service, volunteerism, and civic engagement in the state. And as a lot of the other branches, have kind of lost their contacts because they've been, laid off. I mean, we have become like the people, the messenger, and sort of like, the voice that we're able to, lift up not needs at the national level, at the state level, and whatnot. And I guess that is to kind of bring that back to this, the stronger we are as a commission, the more active we are, the more we have numbers and we have, diverse representation from across the state, the bigger impact and more that we can do. And that's really why I wanted to pull a committee together, because I have a lot of ideas and I kind of have a lot of stuff like somewhat developed, but can't carry that on my own. And I'm just really kind of looking to elevate this to the next level, and have some partners in that work. And so, what I thought just to kind of do during this time is just talk a little bit about kind of briefing on like what the appointments process and our requirements are as far as membership and so forth. And then a little bit about kind of what I'm hoping like the purpose of this committee it can be and what it can achieve. So just to kind of share a little bit about the commission, requirements. So we are a federally required state service commission. Every state, territory, commonwealth has to have one. Everybody, but so there's 52. Everyone, South Dakota has one, and we have expected required roles, and those are articulated. I'll put this link in the chat. Um, sure thing, Radian. In this link, but it basically explains that we have required rules insofar as we must have 15 members at minimum, no more than 25. Um, we have to have specific roles like local government, local labor board, volunteer sector, seniors program, a Vista, alumni, youth representative, and so forth. I don't know if I said business, but if I didn't, we have to have business, education, and whatnot. And then we've got room for other things that we might deem important. Um, on top of that, that link will kind of articulate for you some of the other requirements, but essentially, person could be appointed for 3 years. They can serve that twice. And the appointments are governor office appointed. And so the way that works here at the state is that for all governor's office, for all state commissions and boards, there's an online application, and people complete that, and then we get access to those materials. I mean, me get access to those materials in like the Workday system, the HR online system for the state. And we're responsible for, reviewing the materials, updating the page that says what the, requirements are to serve on our commission. Um, following up and doing interviews with that person. And then we have a process where every board and commission has an advisor at the governor's office who they then say, hey, these are the people that we would like to follow up on. And then they take it from there. So they do the background check and they do, all the stuff about submitting to the for the hearings and so forth. And so we get dates from them, saying like, how all the applications for the public have to be in by this date, and your recommendations to the advisor have to be by this date. Unfortunately, there's only like 2 or 3 times that these hearings happen, and they're not the same every year. So there's catch me by surprise. I can't seem to find the pattern. But I do know that the next one, the applications are due in by June 20th. I think it's July 1st that our recommendations are due to the advisors, and then that's for a September hearing. So it's like it backs up really far from when you think the hearings are. It's like a 3-month earlier process for that. And again, it only happens like this year I think it's only 2 times. So that's basically the process. We're not really one of those commissions or boards that is super high level priority that, the governor is choosing people and putting them on there. we're really doing that ourselves. We don't get that kind of input, or not interference, but like we don't get that kind of like you know yeah, like I guess input's probably the right word, from the office. So we do all that work ourselves. And it has been the case that it's been a pretty big lift. And we, like a lot of commissions, actually have seen where it's been hard to keep our numbers up. Especially during with the pandemic and stuff like that. I mean, people just it's it takes time. It's you're asking people to volunteer their time, and it can be challenging to for people to have more time to do that. A lot of people are really busy, and so it's also challenging. We need to have no more than 50% of like one political representation on the commission. That can be difficult to find a lot of times because I think there's kind of like rhetoric's kind of gotten a little divisive out there. And it's not always that the case that things might be super accessible for people. We're one of the types of commissions where you have maybe more than others where people do it as a volunteer thing. It's not something like, say, the WTDB, where a meeting might be part of their work day. And so, people kind of being able to participate. That's why I've been like making so many changes to kind of address that. But, people being able to participate can be challenging. So we have some empty slots. I think we're only at 12 right now, and we're supposed to have 15 as a minimum. Um, we've got Heidi, who is just extended until we find her replacement. We're allowed to do that. And then, because she already has served her 2 terms. And then we've got two members also that are coming up, like their second round is ending in November. So we've got those three openings. We also just have some positions that, we're just really looking to find people to fill, and to prioritize, like another labor representative. We really want to get that youth commissioner on board, business representative. We'd like to see a tribal representative. We haven't had a tribal representative. And then really see more inclusion from like Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, Coastal Oregon, local government. And I think it'd be great to get more public officials on there. So um, that's sort of just a brief overview of the requirements, the process, and then kind of what some of our goals are with membership. Any questions?
That
So
all
that,
makes sense.
go ahead.
I've done a lot of board recruitment and for nonprofits that I've been part of. And it would be everything you're saying makes sense. And I'm just curious if we've got any kind of visual document that outlines which of those appointed roles are currently missing,
Yeah.
and like a prospect list that we could be collaborating on together. And it sounds like all that information is in your brain, Carrie. And
And in documents, but I
uh,
have, yeah, I'll get them kind of like shared in a place so they're not
okay.
either just in my folder or brain. But no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so that's just kind of the general overview. And then the other things that I'm really hoping, well, actually, I'll kind of move into what I was going to say about purpose. So with this is that it's not just about the recruitment. What I was hoping to kind of see as a purpose for this committee is also for it to serve as, some for it to be able to drive our accessibility practices, for it to drive our commission member practices and support. So some of the things that, just as example, that I've got is, revised board handbook, some practices around accessibility in meetings, things around increasing community engagement and accessibility as well, just some documents to kind of set standards. I've got some recommendations for revisions to our board bylaws, where maybe we look at some additional ex officio members as a way to kind of increase engagement, but maybe with like a lesser lift that might be a barrier for people. Some ideas for even maybe some cross service between other state boards and commissions, that would be great to be able to kind of know what each other are doing. I also have some drafts for training needs survey, so that commission members can let us know, like, hey, like this is what we'd like to see as far as training or additional resources. surveys for commission member satisfaction, those types of things. And the kind of next step is to really kind of get someone else to look at them and say, yeah, you're on the right track, or let's tweak this, and and kind of just move us forward to some approval and implementation. So those are some of the things, including obviously, we've got a roster, but also I do have some sort of worksheets, I guess, to kind of think about, targeted recruitment and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm kind of where I see this committee really being able to advise on those things. And do basically, sort of give the input on things that have been created, or, that need to be created, or maybe we don't want to follow up on, be able to make recommendations to what I'm doing, but also then, push things forward to be recommended or approved by the executive committee or full board. And just overall, it's just sort of looking at like our operations and our governance and our standards, really. Um, so one of the the things that I was thinking about then is kind of like where to start with all of that. I have a draft charter document that could be kind of one of the first places to start, really solidify like what this committee would be about. Um, that's something that I think is kind of ready to go. I was looking at executive committee dates and full commission dates, and I was kind of thinking that, maybe a start would be I could get some of this stuff uploaded to say like Basecamp or, maybe Google Docs. So, because our next meeting is past like when some other meetings would happen. So I was thinking I could upload things to Google Doc and just people could kind of put comments in there and I could, follow up on that. Um, I was thinking, just the charter would be an easy thing to kind of take to the next executive committee, maybe, put it out there to the full commission just for input, or report out that we're working on that for the May 9th meeting. And then the next executive committee meeting is in June, I think the beginning of June. Um, and then be able to maybe have that and some other, the kind of beginning operational documents maybe ready to be approved at the August board meeting. And then some of the like bigger pieces like board handbook or meeting standards and things like that, that I've referenced, be available and kind of unveiled, I guess you could say, at like our September annual meeting, and like approved and ready to be implemented then. And that would take care of some of like these operational things that I've mentioned. And then in the meantime, I could also put up something just sort of like these are the roles I'm looking to fill. Maybe if you wouldn't mind taking a look at that and sharing any ideas you might have. As well as I could share like a script and get your input on it for outreach that I could, we could use, but also I could ask, the rest of the commission to distribute to kind of drum up some interest. So that's what I was kind of thinking as like the initial approach and timeline. I did mention quite a few times like some meeting standards, and I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. And what's really fun is, so if y'all don't know about me, so I am I'm neurodivergent and I am very passionate about accessibility, and I'm studying to get my certification in accessibility, actually. And the state is also implementing and focusing more on implementing accessibility standards. And when we talk about accessibility, we're talking about like print materials, digital materials, et cetera, and ADA guidelines. But I think where we really, also want to broaden that idea is also accessibility for members to participate, for, the public to participate and whatnot, right? And make sure that everybody feels that they're able to participate in this. So some of the things that I've been doing that, I've been doing because I've mentioned it in the full commission meetings is some of it just like revamping our documents and stuff. But when I talk about meeting standards, I'm talking about thinking about accessibility on an additional level, how we notify people we have meetings, how we make our meetings accessible by, if we reference the chat, we read it out loud. We say our names before we start speaking. We make sure, we've got our accommodation request standards, fully available. We're always conscientious about like closed captioning and different things like that. One thing we've been doing is having the meetings more over like lunch breaks and stuff like that to make it easier for people to attend and to make them shorter. So just like, a lot of those different things, we revamped the documents so they didn't look so like intimidating and governmenty, and it looks more like, like we're welcoming. So when I say meeting standards, those are, or event standards and so forth, that's kind of like what I'm talking about a little bit, is more just beyond just accessible fonts, but just how we are an inclusive group in general. And that's again, not just for the public, but for the people that are serving on this commission. Were you gonna ask
Sounds
me,
like,
Jared?
oh, yeah, I got a couple questions. Sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that there may be some other processes and other departments you work with at the state that are kind of like doing some of these meeting standards already, and that there's some good like opportunities for learning from how others are doing this. Is that
I don't actually
or
know if anybody is with the meeting standards and stuff, but what I was really going to say too is that I had a meeting actually with the governor's office for appointments yesterday, because they know like I, kind of geek out on all this stuff, and they're asking if I will come and present on some of the efforts that we're doing, like to the rest of the directors for the state board and commissions. I think there's like a couple of hundred. But they also just mentioned that they are working on redoing their application process, and have asked if I would help advise and test that. And I was so excited to hear that. I thought that was really, really cool. My next thing is I want all state computers to come with the dyslexia font already installed, so you don't have to ask for it. But that's my next goal with the state. But just, stuff like that, and is, I think, just now kind of starting to take place. But the state is also kind of ramping up, and I think they're expecting compliance by April next year. A lot of the like digital requirements for accessibility, so that gets more into like, materials and stuff like that. But I've just really, I think that this group really cares about it beyond just that, but also like how we're being representative, and how we are engaging and whatnot. And so I've just got some ideas that I think it'd be great for us to think about and talk about and see if we do want to adopt those. And I think we would be a leader in that work for sure.
right? Yeah, love that. And then one other quick question. You mentioned potentially bringing a charter to the executive, and that would be a charter for this committee. Is that what you
Yes.
were? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can actually thanks, Rudy. And yeah, I'm on the learning team at the hack too. So like they're really tired of hearing this stuff from me, but I think they're talking about a little bit of that too. Um, so I'm gonna share really quick. So I'm gonna put this in. I wish we were allowed to use Dropbox. I use 365 shared folders a ton, but unfortunately I can't share with people that don't like. I can only share with people that work for the state, which is a little frustrating because I would like to be able to just share with you all straight from there. But the best I can do is I think just upload it all in like Google Docs or something, and then like, do it from there. But just on screen, I'll show you this. Some of it I'll put in Basecamp that way too. We'll just kind of figure out the best way to do it, I guess. Um, okay, can you see this document?
Yes.
So this is just a draft membership and development committee charter. And this is a fully accessible document right now, implementing all of the accessibility standards with headers and all that kind of fun stuff, alt text and this and that. But essentially it would just describe purpose, responsibilities, and then it just gets into sort of the areas that this committee would cover. So recruitment and representation, um, onboarding and development, and that's a whole other kind of thing that I've done too, is revamped like member descriptions for the commission, um, that you all will eventually see. And then yeah, accessibility engagement practices is a continuous improvement, and that's just really, like I said, wanting to make sure, like get feedback and in here, how we can better support people on being on the commission, or additional training activities and things like that to provide access to. And then it just gets into like membership meetings, reporting, resources, and so forth. So it's pretty basic, but definitely would love, yeah, when I put it out there, I'd love to hear if like, if it's hitting the spot, more should be added or whatnot. But I don't want to overload you all with like a bunch of documents today. So that's why I didn't uh, send all of that out. But yeah.
I think this all looks really exciting. Yeah, um, I'm jazzed to be part of this. Thanks for all your work and all the ways you're already thinking about this, Carrie. It's impressive.
Yeah, I'm happy to start getting it out, like you mentioned, like up in, and like it's in a folder in my head. I'm very happy to start like pushing it out to the world because it's been forever. So I'm just excited that other people, yeah, are interested to take part of it. And I think that, like I said, I really think that maybe some of the stuff I put together, some ideas that you all bring forward, like I think that we'll be great role models for, and kind of leaders in some of this work for sure. But I also don't want to overburden you all. So I was kind of trying to think about, spacing this out across some meetings and timing it with some other stuff that would make sense. I can kind of throw up a timeline of, and get some feedback on that from you all. We also do need a committee chair. I don't know if either of you are interested because that does mean, it's a little bit more. It means this meeting, but it also means being part of like the executive committee meetings, which are like half an hour every other month or something. So you can let me know, unless somebody really, really, really right now says yes. You don't have to. Um, but you can let me know. But I also think that we probably should try to get a couple more people on this. And so, have some options. So just think about it.
I always want to say yes to things, and I'm just
Mhm.
gonna give myself
Yeah.
a minute to think about it.
Yes. And I know
Yeah,
that like you have some other boards and other things that you're on. So I appreciate the restraint of thinking it through. I've had like, I mean, I had to like mentally tie my arm down, like get used to finally for a few years, like stop always volunteering for things
right.
and then getting in the weeds as a form of self-care, basically, like,
Mhm.
so I
Yeah,
appreciate that. And yeah, if you're not just like, I totally respect that. Because it doesn't essentially mean like a whole other another meeting. But I also think that, I'm going to try to get a couple more people on this, um, to see, and we can go without a chair another meeting or so. So I think that was kind of all I had. And I appreciate all your like emoji support, Rudy. I think
This
it's
is
even always
great.
like
No,
cute, like,
I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was gonna be a bigger meeting, so I'm kind of excited that this was more a smaller one, an
no, this is our
informational.
first time meeting on this topic. I was able to, yeah, like this isn't our full commission or executive committee meeting. So,
Okay, so I just was looking at the schedules of our meetings, and like I said, just trying to catch up with all our major program work to see how things are going, and so yeah, I'm just glad I could join you today. And of course, if you need me for anything else in other meetings, then I'm happy to be there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, this is a low bar meeting today if you're just watching because it's just, yeah, like I said, our first kind of coming together to get this off the ground. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
in terms of recruitment or filling in gaps, you said we're currently at 12 and we're supposed to be at 15. Is there a particular timeline that you're hoping to get up to 15? by, or is that flexible?
I'm hoping that by the time, I'm hoping the result of the September hearings for confirmations that brings us 15 or above.
Okay.
Personally, I think 25 is way too many people. Like, I think the sweet spot is like 20. That's just my opinion, but that would be great. I mean, if we ever got that far, but um yeah, I would love to be able to be in to get that number up, to make sure we've got backup on some of the positions that are expiring at the end of this year, um, and fill those, but also, be in compliance.
Okay. Thanks.
So
That's
yeah,
nice.
it's unfortunate that the like state service plan, civic health index stuff has kind of like had to go on pause a little bit, because I was hoping to also kind of generate some like interest through some of that partnership and participation. But with what's been going on federally, I kind of had to change my time a little bit, focus. But I think there's some positions that will be easier to fill than others. And I have planted the seed around like a couple that are normally a little hard to fill, about maybe there being like a policy for cross representation. So for instance, the business one and the at-risk youth being difficult, but we have Oregon Youth Works in our office and WTDB. And it'd be great as kind of also like information sharing and knowing what's going on, if maybe like we could get them to agree that, they would like somebody from each of those would be on our board, to be able to like be more collaborative that way, but also reduce a little bit of those silos, and or look at, some of the other state boards and commissions, and say, would you be interested to like serve as an ex officio, or whatnot, so that we kind of we're, what you're doing, and maybe we could tell you what we're doing, and just be able to just establish like some connections a little bit more that way. But the labor, so hard to get filled. The labor rep one,
Mm-hmm.
the union rep one, for sure.
And can one commissioner represent two roles if they both are accurate? Like I work
Yeah,
for local government and I'm also,
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know
we
if
have
I
that,
count as
except that
two.
doesn't make us reach our numbers is the only problem.
Uh-huh. All right, sure. Okay. That's
But I
good
do have
point.
some of y'all listed. And actually, gosh, she just what was her name? It went right out of my head. She was on for like 2 meetings and then she had to leave because her job changed. She was Tillamook City Council, was local government.
Oh, uh-huh.
Do you remember who I'm talking about? The very like
Yes, I do. I
I can't
remember
remember her
that
name.
person.
But yeah, so stuff like that happens, but yeah.
I like what I saw in the charter about kind of onboarding and orientation of new commission members. I think that would be really a valuable focus for this group
Yeah. Yeah,
because
do
I
you
can, yeah, just there's a lot to get oriented to, and I feel like
yeah.
took me at least a year, if not longer, to wrap my head around what the structure is, and so I think that could be helpful to have a buddy system or something like that, or at least a process to get oriented.
Yeah, for sure. And Ask also has like those commissioner, those like video, there are those cohorts for commissioner orientations and stuff, which are nice, but they're just like, it always seems like they're never at the right time. It's
Mhm.
always like months after I've got someone on, but have done some improvements that you all can see to some of the orientation stuff, and just really to the handbook for sure. Um, but that's still a lot for people to take in. So I think kind of having like a point person to like ask questions to would be really nice if people are able to do that. But again, like if we don't get our numbers up, it just becomes so many things that we're asking of each commission member that it could just be a lot. But we can kind of share, have that work a little bit, better distributed the more we kind of get the numbers up and whatnot. So yeah. Well, if there's no other questions, what I was thinking then is, like I said, I would just sort of probably try to, well, I will, but um, aim for maybe the beginning of next week to kind of have some folder set up with some stuff in it, just, and kind of have a little bit of a timeline and just ask, if you could review these or that and whatnot, and the timeline of maybe for some input of when we want to like target or aim for maybe being able to get them approved. Yeah. Are charters still a thing, by the way? Like, I try not to really get into like Robert's Rules of Order world. Like, I kind of, that's like, I understand to be somewhat outdated, not necessarily seen as inclusive and also a little
Mhm.
stodgy, but like, it seems like charters are still a thing, right?
We still use them at the county and the nonprofits I'm part of. Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, there should be
Yeah.
some sort of documentation about
Yes.
what you're doing, what you're there
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
Is the word charter or like that format, is that outdated? Just curious.
Mm.
We still use charters, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Good question.
It seemed like the easiest, yeah. I didn't see
Mhm.
anything else. Did the other boards you're on, Jared, use charters?
Um, yes,
They
I
call it
have
charter?
used charters recently, and have called them charters.
Okay.
Not on all boards, but on some. I think the element, whether you call it a charter or not, the elements that you outlined in that document are really helpful to let remind people like purpose and structure and that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think, like, maybe people call them something different, like committee agreements, or I wasn't really sure, but charter was as like governmenty of a word that I was willing to go with.
Mhm.
Or just sort of like super. I try not to overdo the formalness, but hit the right note on that, and it seems like that one was correct. All right, well, um, I'll let you all get back to it and head to lunch, maybe. It's about that time.
Thanks.
Carrie, can
Thanks,
I ask, is
everybody.
that an actual Willie Tall building behind you out that window, or is that a
It
fake
is
background?
not, no, but
Because I'm sitting here trying to figure out where in Clackamas County that could be.
that was just an image that I found that went well with the
Oh,
union logos. So it
oh,
is
that's not
not in
out your
Clackamas
window.
County.
That's not really out your window.
No,
Oh,
I have, well, you can't see it. It's just the giant eyesore of a courthouse that they still haven't opened.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. This whole time I was just like, wow, that's like, was that really in Clackamas County? What kind of a high rise or whatever is she in there? I couldn't even tell.
No, we
Um,
just narrowly avoided a strike. So this is I'm actually our union vice president. So
yeah. I'm glad everything worked out for you all. Okay, well, I will officially adjourn
I
the
was
meeting.
gonna ask, you're
Oh,
talking
go
you
ahead.
needed somebody from for labor. So I am
Mm,
um
that's true.
well, I was thinking, so Clackamas County Dems has started a labor group
Mhm.
specifically related to that kind of work. And I am on that committee that is just getting started. And we have a lot of folks
Mhm.
involved in labor. I'd be happy to reach out to them. And they're also working on some statewide labor stuff for unions and in
Oh,
that
nice.
aspect.
Okay,
So
great.
I'd be
That'll be
happy
a
to ask
great
if any of
follow-up.
them would be interested.
That'll be a great follow-up. I'll
Okay.
work on sort of updating some new like recruitment language too that can go out.
Okay.
Also, this has nothing to do with what we just talked about, but it's just a fun fact thing. But yes, Tuesday, Craig on the commission and I went and did an outreach career fair at McLaren Youth Facility and Youth Correction Facility in Woodburn. It was really great. But it was just, just kind of like sharing out about that. A lot of interest from the kids there and whatnot. And it was just a whole big career fair thing. But I could not, there were so many Peace Corps and AmeriCorps alumni that work at Oregon Youth Authority. Like I never would have guessed, like so many. And I thought that was so great. And they were all like really supportive about like, we've seen it in the news and like, we'll tell people it's great and stuff like that. Um, so I just wanted to share that. A lot of people served in Ghana. It seems like everybody served in Ghana and
Hmm.
whatnot. But
Wow.
Right.
yeah, that was really fun. Anyhow, I really
Interesting.
that cheered me up to
Yeah.
just continue to see like that community, that representation, and how much it to see so many of them be able to like say to the kids that they were supervising and walking through, like yeah, it changed my life, like serving, and that's how I got into my career and stuff, was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, okay, now I will officially adjourn this meeting, and yeah, I'll talk to you later. Thanks so
right.
much for being
Thanks,
here.
Carrie.
Take care.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you both. Bye-bye.